Turning. And we are live. Welcome to Book Chat with Julie. And we are live with Kaylee Baldwin. Hello.
Hey,
We're
Julie.
excited to have you with us today.
Well, I'm excited to
All
be here.
right. I want to read your bio because I think it's super cute. It is a glamorous day in the life of Kaylee Baldwin includes chasing after her 4 children, checking for a new season of Serial, writing her latest book, binge watching reality cooking shows, hanging out with her husband, and reading in every spare second she can find. She graduated from Arizona State University with a degree in English Lit and currently lives in Southern Arizona with her family. Her books include the Whitney finalist Meg's Melody, Hearts in Peril, a story in the timeless romance anthology, California Dreamin', which was recently translated into Norwegian, super cool, and Take a Chance on Me. And you can follow her on Instagram at Kaylee Baldwin Writes. I have never heard of Serial. What is this? Is it a TV show? Is it a
It's a true crime podcast. So, solving a mystery, a murder mystery that happened in real life. You know,
Oh, are you right
I'm
with
a, no, I am so wimpy. I get scared very, very easily, but for some reason, I don't think I will ever write a mystery, but I absolutely love them.
Hi, Mara. So the show is something that you just religiously watch because you are intrigued by it.
Yeah, it's a podcast I listen to. So something that keeps me going while I have to do dishes.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so let's talk about A Summer Mismatch. Where did you get the idea for this book?
Okay, this one's really fun. So this is a part of a collaboration. So I got a phone call from Lucy McConnell. She's another author that writes sweet romance. Uh, about a year ago this time, and she said, "Kaylee, I have a an idea, and I want you to jump in on this series with us. But it's going to require that we go to Florida in October." And that was, of course, a big sacrifice. But I was like, yes, let's go to Florida in October. I hadn't traveled with COVID in so long. And so a group of 7 of us flew to Florida last October. And there we brainstormed this idea about some matchmaking seniors who want to have their grandchildren fall in love. And it just went from there on what we each thought would be, something funny and light and heartfelt to go within that framework. And I think we all felt, and I felt this particular, speaking just for myself, that after 2020 and 2021 were really tricky years and really hard, and a lot of us had gone through some difficult things. And I knew for me, I'm like, I want something fun and sweet, and that you get done reading and you just feel good about life.
Yeah. I have to admit, this was one of my favorite reads so far this year, just because there were some real laugh out loud moments. Like I was just chuckling to myself in some parts, going, "Oh, this is good. This is good." I really, really enjoyed it. Although the first, I hadn't heard of your series, and I hadn't read any other books in the series. So when I read the first chapter, I'm like, "Oh, what have I picked up?" It's like old people. Is it an old people book falling in love? Not that there's anything wrong with an older generation, falling in love book, but it didn't match with what the cover
Yeah.
had told me. And so anyway, I was glad I stuck with it because, oh man, once it got going with Logan and Julia, it was so, so good.
Thank you. It was so fun to write. The grandparent characters were just the best.
Yeah, they were so funny. The texting was my favorite part with when they're trying to figure out texting and the emojis. Oh my goodness, so funny.
Some of those examples came from real life, used with permission, but
I wondered if they did. Is it like your own grandparents or just people you know?
my mom, um, there's a point. where someone misuses an emoji, and that was my mom all the way. She's like, "Yeah, you could use that."
Oh, it's so nice to be able to include real life experiences, and especially when you have permission, then you don't have
Yeah,
to change the fun of it, the basis of it. All
yeah.
right, so Logan Kent is a veterinarian for elephants. Tell me about the research you had to do, because some of those things were, so real, so realistic, like you really knew about veterinary stuff.
So that was very fun. I adore doing research. So for this book, I will say some background research before I even knew I was going to write this book, but just I have a strong personal interest in elephants, and so I take my kids to the zoo a lot, and we've spent a lot of time at our elephant enclosure down here in Tucson, and then a lot of YouTube videos, a lot of I read so many veterinary articles in journals and medical care stuff like that, more than I ever thought I would learn or know.
What was the weirdest fact that you learned? Can you think of one?
um, well, my favorite things to learn. Well, I already knew how intelligent elephants were, so I already had that baseline. But just reading all of these stories where elephants were super tricky, outsmarting their trainers to get to food or things like that, I was like, they are mischievous. I think the I don't know, the most interesting as far as like as a side thing was I do these which you know about this, but I do these Zoom calls with some authors, and I was talking to this group about the book I was writing, and Esther Hatch was there, and Esther's like, I'm going to send you a link to a video and you've got to watch it. And so I was like, okay. So she sent me a link, and it was some trainers somewhere giving an elephant an enema, and it was terrible and horrible. And we were all of us that watched it were horrified and laughing because it was just a very messy experience. Anyway, I tell the story in my book. It's from that video. And that led me down a rabbit hole of videos like that, where I was like, if anyone sees my viewing history, they're going to wonder what is going on with Kaylee right now.
Oh, that's funny. And the enema, yeah. You
Yeah.
did so well with all that. I mean, the elephants became almost characters in the book because you come to love them as much as the people. And I really thought that was genius on your part. I mean, any animal lover is going to love this book. Because that's not only elephants. I mean, you have the alligator and the costumes, and there's quite a few animals in there that are not regular animals, like or exotic.
Well, and the alligator with the costume. So when we were in Florida, we went to the surf shop to rent some chairs to go to the beach. And right next door to the surf shop, there was a man there with an alligator wearing a t-shirt that was muzzled. And he's like, come over here and hold this alligator. And so we did. And that's where that idea sparked from. We were like, oh, this has to.
Yeah.
But that alligator really liked me. It crawled straight into my lap and then fell asleep. It stayed there asleep in my lap. And I was like, I don't want this here. But shockingly, I started to really like it and petted it, and it was sweet. I never thought I'd think that.
Well, and I guess I just don't really think about alligators having personalities, like crawling into someone's lap and falling asleep. I would never even have imagined that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Me neither.
Oh man. So tell me, is the Palms a real place because it felt real, like somewhere you had been before?
It's not. It's not a real place, but it's fashioned after a resort that we visited. And Emily Clark, her pen name Ellie Thornton, she drew this incredible detailed map of it. So to scale, like this could become an actual city. And I had that to work off of and reference from.
Nice. So tell me about how the collaboration came to be, because it says there more. How many authors are on it?
There's 7 of us.
Oh wow.
And they're all standalone novels, which is great, but they have those Easter egg crossover characters. So if you're enjoying the series and you think, I want more of some of these grandparents, you can find cameos of them in the other books.
Yeah.
So it's Lucy McConnell. She's the one that, I started doing collaborations with her back in 2016 was my first one. And she is an extrovert and she absolutely loves working with other writers. And she reached out to me and said, hey, I've got this, at the time it was Destination Romance series. Do you want to write this with me? And I was like, absolutely, because I'm also a very social writer. So I jumped in and I've just done quite a few books with her and whoever else she gets to write them since. So we did one set in Arkansas. I think they came out in I can't remember if they came out in 2019 or 2020. I think we went to Arkansas in 2019 and then they came out in 2020.
I did love that it was standalone because when I saw it was a series, I'm going, oh my, do I have to read all of these to get it? But I really didn't. I didn't feel like I missed anything.
Yeah, we do that on purpose. Like it's more if you are loving that concept, you're all in. And if you're like, I was just here for one book, that's totally fine too.
Yeah, I might have to go read some of the other ones now since I loved yours so much.
Yeah.
Okay, I have to ask, what was your favorite scene to write?
Oh, that's a good question. My favorite scene to write might have been, well, there's two scenes, but probably the first scene where Logan and Julia meet each other at the gas station. Um, for me, starting a book was really hard. And I had the whole outline written, but I didn't know how the book was going to start. And I just kept thinking about it, and stressing about it. And finally I was like, I just need to have some fun with this. And I sat down and that's what came out was that scene. And it was fun. And I was smiling the whole time writing it. And it made me really excited to jump in with these characters and get to know them even better.
Yeah, I love that the characters had a rich. I mean, they just felt deep, and there was something to them because Logan's dealing, with the loss of his mother, and Julia's dealing, with her not being able to say no to people. Did you relate to Julia not being able to say no and all the self-help books that her grandma was giving her? I mean, it was funny, but it was so relatable. Is that something that you struggle with too, or is that something you just made up?
No, so learning to say no has been a big lifelong journey for me, like something I struggle with. And part of it is I want to make everyone happy and I want to help everyone. And part of it is that I have some serious like fear of missing out going on. And so I'm like, I have to say yes because what if it's fun and I'm not there and I miss out on it? And some of this has led me to some of the best experiences of my life. Like, I ran the Storymaker conference, and part of that was that how could you say no to that opportunity? But sometimes it leads me to have my plate be a little too full and stressful.
Yeah.
The difference between me and Julia, though, I actually adore self-help books. I read them all the time. I always tell myself if I just get one takeaway from it, one actionable thing to try, then I feel like it was worth it. And it's not even the lists of do this, do this, do this, do this. They always have such amazing stories. And I love these amazing stories of someone overcoming something. It's probably my favorite. If that's a genre of story, that's probably my favorite genre of story. So I can't resist.
So you read a lot of self-help books, or what's your favorite thing to read?
I read, my favorite thing to read is definitely romance or a story that has a romantic through line in it. It's my absolute favorite. I read everything. I'm just looking at my shelves. My shelves are right here behind me. I love mystery, historical, biography, memoir. I mean, just name a genre and I could just probably be like, oh, I love this book in that genre.
Do you have a favorite author or not really?
Oh, that's a tough question.
I know. That's a question.
I know. I have some auto buy authors. So I have a lot of friends who are authors, and I pretty much auto buy all of their books and I try to read them because there's nothing that makes me happier than sitting down with a book that my friend wrote. and seeing pieces of them in it makes me really happy. When I am having a hard time, I love light romantic comedy, things like Melanie Jacobson, Brittany Larson, Emily Henry, um, Sarah Eden, all of them. I just adore their books when I need to pick me up. Julie Donaldson, and then when I feel like life is a little more stable and we're not going through a hard time, that's when I'm digging into like my literary novels, like my Frederick Bachman and some of Heather Moore's serious historical romance, or not romances, but historical novels and things like that.
Yeah, I love her stuff too. I am her new book Hannah just came out. Heather Moore's new book Hannah. I'm excited to dive into that one.
I haven't read that one yet. So.
Yeah, it just barely came out like a few days ago, so I haven't read it either. So, did you base any of your characters in the Summer Mismatch on real life people?
I absolutely did. Yeah. So the character that most closely takes after a real person is Julia has a brother in the book. His name is Cameron. And her parents are off for the summer touring Europe. And so Cameron comes to stay with Julia. Cameron is 16 years old and he has Down syndrome. And I have a 16-year-old son with Down syndrome. And for a while, I don't read a lot of books that have characters with Down syndrome. And so I was like, I really want to have a character like him in a book because it's such a complex experience that's full of joy, but also full of difficulties, whether it's, you know, watching him go through difficult things is probably the most hard part of it all. And so in the book, Cameron has a lot of health problems, and my son has all the same health problems Cameron has. And so it was just interesting for me to kind of explore that in a fictional arena and see how that goes.
Did you put a lot of your son into it, or did you just mostly make up the character from a lot of different angles that you know from having a child with Down syndrome?
Both. So it is a lot of him and a lot of what we're working through right now. So in the book, Cameron has a talker, and it's a speaking device. It's basically a tablet with buttons that say the words for you. And that is something we have been working with my son on for the last year. And so my life has been very consumed with that. We have weekly speech appointments about this at home. It's a constant me learning how to do it, me teaching him. So this is always on my mind. And that was part of the reason why I was like, when there's something that's on my mind so much, a lot of times I will put that in a book just because I'm mentally spending so much time in that space. But I will say Cameron is probably a little more social than my son. My son tends to, he's very quiet, very reserved. He would dance in front of a group of people, but I think if a whole group then joined him, he would be like, I'm out of here. Like, I was just doing this in front of you guys. I don't want to be surrounded by people.
Yeah. When you were imagining the story, was Cameron always meant to be in it, or did you imagine it and then add him later?
I added, well, he's been in it since the first draft, but when I first conceived of this story back in October, I knew it was going to be Romeo and Juliet. I knew it was going to be grandparents feuding, and Julia and Logan, trying to find their way despite all that. It was when I sat down to outline it, their like romantic arc, that I just got thinking that I needed another layer, and that was the layer that I knew was missing.
Yeah, that was a great layer. The dance scene was so good.
Yeah, that was fun.
I did like the behind the curtain scene. I won't give anything away, but the behind the curtain scene is awesome. And the wrong dress scene, I laughed pretty hard. That whole arc really with the grandpas and the wrong dress. So
The wrong dress scene was a later addition, I will say, and that I just woke up at one point, and when you just have those ideas, and I was like, oh my gosh, what if this happened?
Well, it was perfect. It was so awesome. And I think you write romance really well. The kisses were, sweet with a little heat, and I don't know, it's just perfect. The whole book was great with coming together with the romance. And I always like a happy ending. Spoiler alert. Everyone
You
knows when you pick up a romance, you have to have the happy ending.
right. That is one thing. If you pick up a Kaylee Baldwin book, just know they will be happy in the end. I
That's
promise. I will never not do that for you.
great. Tell me how you got into writing. I don't even think I know how you got into writing.
So I started writing a long time ago. When I was pregnant with my second kid, we moved to Tucson, Arizona. I didn't know a single soul. I get hyperemesis gravidarium, so I was so sick I could hardly get up off the couch. And I had a son that I couldn't take out in public very much because of his health problems. And I just started writing stories. I think I needed to escape my reality that was really hard for me at the time. So I wrote Meg's Melody. That was my first book to come out. And my funny story with that is I hadn't told anyone I was writing a book. I just didn't really, I was a little embarrassed about it, didn't want anyone to know. And I had been Googling in the book, my main character gets a divorce. And after she's divorced, she finds out she's pregnant. And so I had been Googling timelines for getting a divorce in Arizona because it takes place in Arizona. And at the time, my husband and I had a shared computer, and he sat down and clicked on the Google search bar, and that was the first thing that popped up in previous searches. And he was like, we need to talk. And so we had a good laugh about it. But the cat was out of the bag. So anyway, that one got picked up by Cedar Fort in 2010. And then it was a Whitney finalist, which was incredible experience. And the Whitneys are an awards program for LDS fiction. And anyway, it was the first I'd heard of them. It was the first I'd heard of Storymakers, and that really changed my life immeasurably. So, and then my life has always been up and down. Because of my oldest son's health problems, we were just in and out of the hospital, lots of surgeries. He's had over 30 surgeries. Just a lot going on. And so I have to say my writing career until recently has been pretty sporadic. I try to get out a book a year. Sometimes it's every other year of writing. I wrote young adult for a while and got an agent for that. And I wrote multiple young adult novels. I wrote 3 that we shopped around. And I had a lot of really close calls where editors wanted all 3, went to the editorial board, and for one reason or another, they decided not to pick it up. So after 2 years of that, I went back. I leaned in more to writing romance, which I've always loved writing romances. And it was a little more fun, a little less stressful of those rejections that are just so hard.
It's a hard business. It's a hard business.
So hard. Yeah, and since then that's what I've been doing. Like I said, I'm a very social writer, so I've done collaborations with Rachel Renee Anderson, Jolene Perry. I have my timeless romance anthology with Heather Moore and Sarah Eden. And I just had this book come out. I don't know if you saw this one come out. This one just came out in May, and it was all the proceeds went to charity, but it was with Josie Kilpack, Jennifer Moore, a bunch of really awesome authors. So if anyone asks me to write with them, the answer is probably yes.
So you love collaborating.
I love it. I need to do my own thing. I know that, but I really love collaborating.
What are you going to do with the young adult books that didn't get published?
I don't know. That's a good question. I've had a few people that have said they would love to read them. So I have debated self-publishing them and getting them out there so people could read them. I really love all of these books, but they are a very different feel than my romance. So if I did, I'd probably do a pen name. They are very serious, very issue driven. The endings are happy, but more bittersweet. So So I'm not sure. I'm not sure what I'll do with those.
Yeah. Well, what are you working on now?
So right now I'm working on a couple things. I like to have a couple things going at a time. I'm working on the sequel to A Summer Mismatch. Um, a sequel, what do you call it? A companion novel. So here's A Summer Mismatch, by the way. It's Julia's sister will be the main character. And
Oh, I didn't
she
see that one coming.
yeah, she's an influencer, Instagram influencer, and she comes home and gets basically um, paired up with the very last person you might think an Instagram influencer would get paired up with, a very grumpy, rough around the edges kind of guy. So it's super fun. I'm absolutely loving writing it. I'm hoping to have it out in October, and then I'm also working on a historical novel, so a full length
Wow.
historical.
Like
Yeah,
a Regency romance or something?
it's done. Well, it takes place in 1940s America, 1940s and 1950s America. So it's done. I'm just, um, the thing people don't always realize about authors is that sometimes even we lack confidence after so many books. I just need to get brave enough to let people read it.
It's so funny to hear 1940s as historicals. One of these days, we're going to hear 1980s as a historical romance or something, and be like, "Oh my goodness!"
We will. Yeah, it's like World War II America. So
Oh, that's
it's
awesome.
I love it. I think it's a fantastic story. So it's just as soon as my
So you
mom's
pretty
my
much
mom.
have these books laying around that you haven't done anything with.
Yeah. Yep.
You could put 4 books out there tomorrow if you wanted.
Good. More. I have even more. And yeah, I just anyway, usually takes, I have my tribe, my writer friends, and it usually takes I don't know if you know Renee Clark. She writes amazing contemporary romance, or Jolene Perry are usually the two that are like, Kaylee, you need to put this book out there and let people read it.
Is it just imposter syndrome, or you're just not sure if it's ready?
Yeah, it's mostly imposter syndrome. Usually, when I get a book out there, it's like that's probably why I like these collaborations, is because I'm kind of like, they say, Kaylee, your book's coming out May 24th, and so I can't sit on it. I have to just press publish.
Yeah. So are you traditionally published or are you hybrid? I don't really know actually.
My first book, Meg's Melody, was traditionally published, and then the rest since then have all. Well, I went with a small publisher, but I have all my rights back now to my books, and so now they're all self-published.
Hmm. Have you enjoyed that experience?
I have. There's quite a learning curve, but it's been really fun to do. Like, I don't make my own covers. I hire people to make my covers, but it's fun to watch that process happen, and it's fun to um, to have more control over my ideas. I do see myself being a hybrid. That I do have a goal of. So my historical novel, I am going to see if I can get it traditionally published. So we'll see.
Do you still have your agent?
I don't know. We parted ways a few years ago. After not selling 3 books, I think we were both feeling a little burned out.
Is a summer mismatch going to be put out on audio?
Yeah, so I'm going to do this on audio, and that'll be I only my second book on audio. So I can't wait for that.
Have you already chosen a narrator?
No, that's the next step. I
That's the
need to
next
choose my narrator.
I love that process. I love having my book come alive. The narrators are so amazing out there.
Oh, I can't wait. I listen a lot of the books I read. I'm listening to on audio. So
What are you reading right now? Reading or listening?
listening to. So I'm
Yeah.
listening. So I have an advanced listener's copy of. I usually have a few going on at a time. I'm going to look it up. It's called Acts of Violet by Margarita Montemore. She wrote Una. out of order, which has been really, really good and interesting. It's my first book ever by her. And then I'm also listening to Bomb Shelter by Mary Laura Philpott. So it's a nonfiction, and I've been telling everybody, if you want to know what it's like inside of my head all the time, go read Bomb Shelter, because that's what it's like.
Those don't sound like light reads.
Yeah, that one's about a woman navigating her child's health issues and her own anxieties, and it's hilarious, but also like, oh gosh, right in the heart.
I did want to ask you. So, do you feel like you're a funny person, like in real life, and because the funny moments in the book in Summer Mismatch were so smooth? I'm like, is she just naturally funny, or did you have to work at the funny parts? I'm always wondering about this about romantic comedy authors. I have to ask.
I don't know. I think I'm funnier on paper than I am in real life. I like to tell funny stories. So that is one thing I absolutely love. If I have a funny story or funny thing that happened to me, or even something that was just almost sad, but I can kind of make it funny in the way I tell it, that's one of my very, very favorite things to do. If I can make people laugh. But I can also be really reserved in person. And so that's something that probably, once I'm really comfortable and, more self-assured, then I love to jump into those funny stories. And I think that comes out in my writing, because it's just me and the computer, and
Yeah.
I can just, make myself laugh.
Oh, that's good. I wish I was more funny in real life. I always think of the funny later on, like the day later or something.
Well, that's the beauty of writing it, because when I do have those midnight, what if she wore the wrong dress moments, then I can go back and add those in.
Exactly. All right, last question, unless Mara has one. But if you could meet any author, alive or dead, who would you pick?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I might pick Louisa May Alcott. I love Louisa May Alcott's books. I think she's a fascinating woman. I read her book, Eight Cousins, when I was really young. I was probably third or fourth grade. It was on the shelf at home. I just plucked it off because my mom was like, I am not taking you to the library more than once a week. And I'd already read all my library books. And so I plucked it off, read it. And from then on, I've read a lot of Louisa May Alcott's books. I absolutely love them. Most people have read Little Women. Little Women is not Little Women's hard. Like that was a sad book. But I would just love to sit down and talk to her she was part of this writing. She was a social writer too. So she was a part of this writing group. And I just think I would love to pick her brain and talk to her. That's one of my favorite parts of being a writer. This is why I tell people, I'm like, you need to, when they say, I want to write a book, I'm like, you should write a book and be a writer, because writers are the best people in the world. I love my writer friends, and they're so compassionate, empathetic. They really care about you. They tell the best stories, because that's what they're framed to do. And I feel like they're always up for an adventure, because we're always like, oh, we could write about this later. So, I'm going to Alaska in a couple weeks with some writer friends, and we're going to write a book and set it in Alaska because we can. And there's so many parts of writing that aren't glamorous and that are really hard, but then there's parts like that where the friendships and the writers themselves, that I could never give this up because of that. I love my writer people. So Louisa May Alcott for sure. I would love to be her BFF.
Well, I'm definitely glad I met you, and we can be writer friends now.
Me too. I've loved meeting you.
Oh, well, I'm so glad you could be a book chat today. And Mara doesn't have any questions. She thought I asked great ones. I mean, I do have one more, but if you've read Little Women, do you feel like Laurie ended up with the person he should have ended up with?
So that's funny. I never did. I always was mad who Laurie ended up with. I always thought he should end up with Joe. And in fact, the first time I read that book, I actually didn't even finish it because I got to the point where they didn't get together and I closed it and I was like, this is garbage. This book is garbage. But then I read it again and I was like, okay. But did you see the movie with Laura Dern? It came out maybe 3 years ago. And Timothy Chalamet he played Laurie. That was the first depiction of that book that I've ever seen where I thought, oh, Laurie ended up with the right person. And it's good that Joe moved on. And it was a brilliant movie. I absolutely loved it. And that was just a few years ago. It's completely changed my way of thinking about it.
I am definitely going to have to look for that movie then, because I felt the same as you. It's like, what?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah. Watch it and I'll be curious. Like, let me know if you do watch it, what you think, because that was the first time I ever thought that's the right pairing happened. So
Okay, I'm definitely going to look into it because I need that closure.
yeah.
For my romantic heart, I guess. Well, thank you again for joining me. Mara, you are the winner of the $5 Amazon gift card, so I will get that to you. And thanks again, Kaylee. I appreciate it. Your book is A Summer Mismatch. So funny, so good. You really need to read it. It's a great summer read.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me, Julie. This was a lot of fun.
We'll see you next month on Book Chat with Julie.